A classic, time-honored tradition of horror on the internet is trying to turn something normal or innocent into something scary, especially pre-existing stories and franchises. I would say this has fallen out of style, but with the resurgence of creepypastas recently, I feel like it's coming back in the limelight. But with this comeback also comes the return of a common criticism. You see, the target of many of these stories tend to be media that was aimed at children, and the question becomes, does that really need to be made scary? Can it be made scary? I do think many times the answer is no, but I think it's a little deeper than that. While some can miss the point of horror or just not be effective at it, I think others can add a surprising amount of horror to an existing IP, or just simply use it as a good framing device for a scary story. There's plenty of room to explore when you free yourself from the tropes of needing hyper-realistic gore or making a main character evil. I also think people can underestimate the unique relationship children's media and horror can have. Obviously, children are more susceptible to just being scared, but I also feel there's unique ways for this kind of media to be scary, or at least interestingly unsettling. The boundaries that exist to make a work suitable for children, and the contrast between the tone of such a thing normally and the tone of something scary both have great potential. Between the tactfulness you need for intentionally scary children's media and the unintentional horrors that can arise, there's a lot to appreciate and thus a lot of potential to expand in a real story. And it's for that reason I try not to be too dismissive of that sort of creepypasta and the like. SpongeBob.
I'm SpongeBob.
As someone who grew up in the Bob's golden era, both for the show itself and the many games it got, I really cannot imagine the character or the world he inhabits being scary in the slightest. As much as a laughingstock creepypastas like Sonic.exe can be, I could at least see how you can extrapolate or add horror to a franchise like Sonic or Mario. But like SpongeBob, what does he have going for him? I could, I guess, see some potential in a place like Rock Bottom of the Trench, but that's really it. The show having a sense of comedy so strong that 20 years later, full-grown adults can quote most jokes makes it really hard to make it seem scary. There's been Halloween episodes, and yes, the games sometimes have weird details or odd levels, but that's all you get really. I think some of the best SpongeBob-related media to ever dabble in horror is still comedic at the end of the day, stuff like YouTube poops, and despite the best efforts of many people in the community, nothing's really convinced me otherwise. Even the best out there feels more funny than scary because it's tapping into that sort of contrast that even the show sometimes uses when it does those gross close-ups. But of the few exceptions to my general disinterest in the idea of making the Bob into something scary, one really stands above the rest. SpongeBob SquarePants Treasure Hunt, a platformer game by the username Nixliz, which is presented as an unfinished, unreleased Game Boy Advance game. For what it is, it's not only quite well made, but I think it taps into a unique kind of unsettling and mysterious atmosphere that you can only get with a weird, unfinished, and maybe unlicensed game. It's also free and quite short, so if you have an interest, I would highly recommend you go try it out before watching the rest of this video. I'll try to do more than just summarize, but there will be spoilers. But if you played it before or just really can't be bothered, then let's dive right in. The vacant apartment of deceased Mr. was the target of an urban exploration in 2016. The explorer, preferring to remain anonymous, claims to have discovered a development file burned onto a CD in the homeowner's bedroom, stashed under piles of wires, unidentifiable machinery, computer parts, alligator clamps, and distressingly surgical tools. Eventually, the file was dumped onto the internet, the file in question being an in-development build of the cancelled, possibly unlicensed Game Boy Advance game, SpongeBob SquarePants Treasure Hunt, locked in its own emulator for playtesting purposes. The explorer was never heard from again, and every single one of his videos online have been wiped clean. Thus reads the description for the final unfinished build, SSTH2004.GBA. This dark, maybe a little cliche backstory contrasts with the actual game once we jump right into it, where we are expectedly greeted with the sight of the yellow sponge. But it really doesn't take long for this sight, or for that of SpongeBob's room, to just register as off. Gary here doesn't look quite right. The start of the game tells us it was developed by a studio called Bunchiesoft. There's expectedly little information about this company, beyond the original upload's description telling us that they had worked on other games, but all were left unfinished as the company liquidated its assets and simply disappeared. The overabundance of stock art and show screenshots, in addition to all the graphics just kind of being scuffed, really does hammer home the point that this is an unfinished release. It starts the game off just by feeling that bit off, with a good handful of the gameplay sprites even being reused from other SpongeBob titles too. SpongeBob's bedroom serves as our main menu, giving us two options: New Game and Visit Mr. Krabs. Krabs gives you gameplay hints and tips. One of my first thoughts is questioning why they'd use him over Squidward or Patrick, but as SpongeBob's boss, it makes sense he would give some tips, and I wouldn't have been shocked if an instruction booklet or the like explained that he's here for the treasure mentioned in the title. For now, he just says, "Collect shells for a high score." So we press New Game and proceed on to see one of the biggest strengths of this game: actually being a game. It's pretty standard but fun platformer affair. I really respect this game for going with this instead of just being like others that go for walk to the right until something scary happens, or opting for a more explicit horror gameplay approach, which admittedly wouldn't be bad either. The game itself does run on the shorter side, and levels can be under a minute if you're fast enough. The gameplay isn't super difficult unless you play impatient like me, or you're going out of your way to get all the spatulas. You have a ludicrously fast sprint that can really trivialize some sections of levels, at least this early on. It's also kind of funny how if you stand still while holding the sprint button, you'll notice SpongeBob's idle animation is faster too. I don't know if that's intentional or not, but part of it feels like it adds to the game's whole little janky atmosphere. Our first level's Bikini Bottom, and it's about as basic as you can get. Slugs and jellyfish stand in your way, and at the end of the level, you're greeted with a treasure chest to open up. On top of the shells, we grab the golden spatulas, which, in line with other SpongeBob games, serve as a main collectible. Finishing our trek across Bikini Bottom, we go back to check in on Mr. Krabs. Watch out for sea bears. That's a cute reference. Licensed or not, someone at Bungiesoft at least seems to watch SpongeBob. Our next level's Kelp Forest, which, again, serves as a nice little reference to the show, and was the first level to teach me maybe I should slow down a bit. Not much more to really say on this level, though. It's where I first got a game over and was greeted with even more stock assets ported in not the best quality. The more of those I saw, the more I had to wonder if this game was licensed or not. Was it using that stock art like other bootlegs, just cheaply reusing it, or was it so early in development it's all they could really use for the time? SpongeBob's little icon also becomes a skeleton when he dies. Probably scary to you as a kid, but just funny to me as an adult now. But given the expectations set by the game's creepy backstory, I found it a little notable to point out. Continuing with the theme of Kelp Forest takes us to the next level and our first boss fight, the Sea Bear. Maybe I'm too used to early platformer bosses, but this was a complete joke. Every time I played through this level, I'd beaten him in maybe under 10 seconds. You could stunlock him pretty easily. Even if you're not being precise, you have enough iframes and hearts that you don't really have to worry about it. It's at least a nice introduction to the idea this game will even have boss fights, and a pretty good song that plays during it. This is also where I took note of something. When you step on most enemies, a cartoonish splat sound plays. It's pretty satisfying feedback. The whole game has pretty good sound design. SpongeBob's footstep noise plays every time you walk, and there's a lot of cute, catchy little jingles in the game. It's all quite well done, though I do have to have a minor nitpick. A lot of the sounds do sound compressed to fit on a Game Boy Advance, but some aren't. It's not a huge deal, but for a game that's otherwise pretty good at selling you on the fact that it's meant to be a GBA game, that does take away a bit. I think the fact I spent about as long talking about sound as I did about the Sea Bear should show how easy a fight that was. Let's press on before I keep yammering on about other details. We return to SpongeBob's room and... looks like the image got darker for some reason, but the room on the left is totally blacked out too, so this isn't just some kind of display error, it's a different image. Weird. I mean, you and I both know where this is going, but maybe SpongeBob was just being smart and responsible and turned the lights out before he left. Let's go check on Krabs. When I woke, the stench of sulfur was my only solace, trapped within the very Earth's maw. Okay. The interior of the Krusty Krab is dimmed as well. It's hard to say if that's actually meant to be something Krabs is saying or just the game messing with you. My immediate thought is war story. I'm serious. The show has made some offhanded jokes that Mr. Krabs did fight in a war. I can oddly picture this being like an account of a patrol into uncharted territory. Something that went wrong. The when I woke part especially making me think that. Proceeding to the next level greets us with an entirely new map, our next location being the Cliffs of Salt. It has a desolate and drab atmosphere, nothing super overt yet, but it certainly is somewhere we've never seen before in the show. It really doesn't feel 100% out of place, but it also doesn't feel like it fits perfectly. Like it's being made by developers who have an idea of SpongeBob, but just not enough to really get it. The sulfur on the stage reminds me of one thing though.
SpongeBob!
The new enemies too are quite strange, seemingly resembling a... Oh. They don't really pose a new challenge, but the new look is certainly strange. You heard the noises and the bodies don't really disappear either. For an implementation of gore, it's really subtle. It doesn't draw attention to itself too much, it just simply happens. And while talking about the atmosphere, there's also the music. The piece is droning and desolate, and combined with the spires in the background with bridges, makes it feel like this was somewhere people once explored, but now is just left to time. Moving forth, remnants of those who came before would come into view. I shuddered. Up next is the Sacred Ground. I really want to ask where are we, but I know we're not getting an answer for that. But it feels like we've entered a metaphorical and maybe a literal Mariana's Trench. While the whole of the sea may be a strange place, we are now where light not even dare travel, where the strangest of life forms in the sea and all of Earth call home, and where echoes of lives past still stand tall, ruins now with none to call them home. So anyways, the sentient kitchen sponge who works as a fry cook marches forward to the strange sacred grounds. If you couldn't tell, I'm already fond of the level's theming, but it has a pretty unique gimmick too. You jump on these altars to make either blue or red blocks solid. It's a very simple mechanic, but the game uses it quite well. For the short runtime of this game, they get a lot out of it. This level is the first where you have to hurt yourself to get the spatula, and I feel mixed about that. We're 5 levels in and there's never been a precedent that hurting yourself unlocks new paths. But at the same time, you have plenty of hearts and these paths almost always provide a Krabby Patty at the end. So it isn't too risky, it's just something you have to be aware of. Again, owing to the short length of the game, it really isn't a problem. Had it been longer or had more punishment for game overs, this might have been a serious complaint. This level isn't too tricky outside of needing to dodge arrows. Youch. The file for this level's theme is also called M_Kata. Given the level's name and the bones everywhere, it shouldn't be hard to guess what that's short for. An effigy, an abomination of earth and flesh would stand. The incestuous procreation that bore the shame of the entity it honored. The effigy offers a little bit of a step up for boss fight difficulty, but only a little. The weirdly Squidward-looking statue flips the game around by flipping its head around. With each rotation, it shoots out a set of arrows, also activating the switch blocks on the side of the room. Use them to jump onto the 2 pot-looking shapes on the sides to damage the boss. The boss seems completely artificial at first, but as you wear it away, it's clearly more organic. If you had no trouble dodging the arrows last time, this will be a cakewalk for you. With both sides destroyed, it explodes in a mass of stone and viscera. Looks like we aren't alone with Gary anymore. Dust battered my tired eyes as the sun beat down on my bare skin. I sank into the ground below me. It was not sand, but ash. Compared to the last 2 levels, the Ashen Field isn't too much to write home about. As Krabs alluded to, there's a sinking mechanic in this level. It doesn't kill you or anything, it just brings you down. You'll have to take advantage of this to get the gold spatula. Outside of that, and the introduction of the new enemies called Bone Rats, which are surprisingly really cute, there's not much to write home about here. We simply press on in search of our next treasure chest. I found myself in a city of heads. The ancient eyes of reborn, twisted folk judging me. I pity them, not dead, but not living. Just off name alone, this is one of my favorite levels in the entire game. With just one look at the scenery, well, the scenery stares back. If the signs and the giant closed eyelids didn't make the level's mechanic obvious, this is a level all about remaining unseen. It's almost like a stealth level. Fail to remain unseen and, well... These shadowy masses go down in one hit, but If you're not ready, they can certainly overwhelm you. But if you're really smart about it, you can actually use them to your advantage, including to collect this level spatula. While this game has really good sprite work all around, I have to give some real credit to the eyes. It feels just the right amount organic, and especially the open sprite just... ugh. I've been a Resi fan for years, so I'm used to eyes where they shouldn't be, but the size and simplicity do enough to really be effective at just getting under my skin. If you try and wrangle a shadow monster to get the gold spatula, you might be here a while. But if you're good at sneaking or just fast, this won't take you too long. You should leave. The name Inner Sanctum might prepare you for something like the Sacred Grounds, but what we see seems like the inside of a body. Bubbles of sanguine red and sharp white spikes resemble blood and teeth respectively, and everything just feels way too organic. But we've no option but forward anyways. Those blood bubbles are the key here. You've got to precisely bounce across each of them. It honestly does feel like a culmination of the few times the game has used this mechanic before, even as far back as Jellyfish Fields. The bow turrets and the altars from the Sacred Ground also return, bringing basically every main mechanic back in full circle. It's short, but what lies ahead is a gauntlet to prove what you've learned across this whole game. We've come this far. We can't back down now. There's no stopping us. After all, you know what SpongeBob says. We're nearly at the finale of this hunt. Only one more stop lies ahead. This is it. Have I praised the game's sprite work enough yet? Because I really do love the look of Doppelbob Pants over here. He moves back and forth, occasionally lunging and sometimes stopping to shoot out projectiles. They'll give you a bit of a challenge, especially because it can be difficult sometimes to land directly on his head and not on his side. But he goes down surprisingly quick. As you quickly learn, he's not alone. He's simple, but he can be surprisingly tough. You really have to be mindful of your positioning and what pattern he uses to shoot. If he opts to shoot downwards, you usually have an easy time, so long as you can just sprint past it. But if he aims directly for you, it could be really tough if you don't have the space to run under him or jump over the projectiles. I'm only a little ashamed to admit that I got stuck here for quite a bit. I was definitely playing a little careless and distracted, but still, it was a rough boss fight. I have to give the design some credit too. The pale look of the imposter SpongeBob, along with him being faceless, I think makes for a really good fake SpongeBob design without going too overt. It's about as best as you can get out of the character, I feel. In the files, he's also called Sonch, which I think is supposed to be a reference to the SpongeBob meme. I also think it boosts the little bit of funniness he has. What you smiling for, man? I like how the fake Squidward looks more like a doll or some kind of sack of empty flesh. I think its hollow features are pretty evocative. The weird flesh thing it rides on is also really cool. It gives it a suitable final boss design. It reminds you of some of the mutants from Resident Evil games, or like something you'd see in a shmup that decides to get all creepy for no reason. And him piling it around gives off Eggman vibes. Originally, after you beat this dastardly duo of doppelgangers, depending on how many gold spatulas you collected, you get the final treasure chest and wrap up this treasure hunt for good. It made for a simple, suitable end to the original build, using up all the horror it could after its initial bait and switch, and would bring an end to everything in the original game. But not this build. We're refreshed with a full set of hearts and one final gauntlet of enemies ahead of us. Especially some of the projectile shooting enemies can prove extremely tough here. In the background appears a mass of flesh blended with that Squidward we fought earlier, maybe mixed in with a brain. We damage it after every set of enemies we defeat by stepping on a giant flesh bud. bursting in fireworks of gore upon its defeat. We wake up as Squidward, seemingly freshly broken out of a test tube. SpongeBob, Patrick, Plankton, and Mr. Krabs can all be seen in their own test tubes, half of those characters not being accounted for across this game yet. And the whole site, on top of where exactly we're meant to be, both remain mysterious. As we move on with no music and no signs of any life, we can notice Bunchiesoft logos on the walls. Squidward doesn't seem to have any kind of remarkable abilities, just operating the same way SpongeBob did. We move on with no real goal in mind, and if you're like me, dozens of questions. How are we at the Bunchiesoft offices? But before we have much time to think, a crack of glass signifies we're under attack. The doppelganger's after us. We have no option to properly attack, only to run. I guess that makes Squidward weaker than SpongeBob. How will this affect power scaling? Probably as a result of me holding sprint the whole game, I have no trouble outrunning him. We make our way to an elevator, and proceeding to our floor, we walk down the hall and... we're greeted with an admittedly funny image and an error screen. This had me worried and even made me jump a little bit after that really long boss fight. I was under the impression that there was going to be more to the SpongeBob campaign and a proper ending like the original build. This wasn't helped that when I went to research, a wiki, granted a completely unsourced video gaming fandom wiki, but some of the only sources out there all the same, said this screen was just unused. But it seems this is the end of at least the main part of the game. But given that password and all the unanswered questions, there certainly has to be more, but where? So let's take a moment to just unpack what we've been through so far. SpongeBob SquarePants Treasure Hunt is a 2004 unreleased and unfinished video game by Bunchiesoft of questionable official approval. As the name suggests, SpongeBob is on the hunt for some kind of treasure, but as the game progresses, we go from the normal Bikini Bottom levels to strange, almost abyss-like levels. It's a sudden tone shift, complete with a bit of gore and Mr. Krabs sharing these strange abstract stories that seem to be from his perspective in these strange areas we've never seen before. One could say these are just meant to be more mysterious areas to really sell the idea we're searching far and wide for treasure, and maybe the more dark elements are just there as a joke, or so the developers can get more guidance on what's appropriate for this kind of game. It's out there, but not entirely impossible. For example, Epic Mickey had some famous early concept art that was really dark, but despite some misconceptions, it never reflected actual ideas the devs had. Instead, they were made to push the limit and get feedback on what they could and couldn't reasonably do. But the quantity and detail in all of this dark material that's seen in SpongeBob's Treasure Hunt clearly shows that it's not just some kind of placeholder or joke. There's too much effort on display here. It has to be an intended part of the finished product. It's across both builds too. And that raises the first question then. Why? These ideas persist across different builds, so unless we assume they come from the same exact developer, this isn't just one rogue employee, it's the intended game. There's also all the questions that arise from the fact that we go to the Bunchiesoft offices. Is this supposed to imply SpongeBob and everybody are real? Probably not, but there's something more meta going on, I think. But that level, the third final boss phase that precedes it, and the dialogue that comes before it all came specifically in the 2004 build. These loose threads and fourth wall breaks only exist here. The first found and released build is more cohesive, one with a proper ending and less loose threads. While it's short and tonally inconsistent with SpongeBob, it's a self-contained story that someone could just pick up and play. There's obviously more to the 2004 build here, but no game released in this era would just not have an ending and instead cut to an error screen like this. Well, I mean, maybe a modern game would. I guess Bunchiesoft was really just ahead of the curve. But lastly, you just have all the dozens of questions that come after the game's tone shift and all that it presents. On a broader level, there's something about the tone shift that reads to me as almost like humorous in a certain way. Mainly in the contrast. It feels like the same spirit of something like the show's gross close-up shots being taken to their absolute extreme. It subverts the idea this cartoony world needs to always be cartoony and inoffensive, but unlike those gags which are one and done, it keeps going. Not really being funny, just upsetting or disturbing. And lastly, before we continue, I also want to mention what the plot and themes are supposed to be here. I have my running theory that whatever this hunt was started by Mr. Krabs, with some knowledge of treasure he had before, which is why he serves as the hints in the game. If we're to assume most or if not all of his dialogue is meant to be from Mr. Krabs as a character, and not some kind of fourth wall break or other meta device, it seems like he's aware of the strange and dark environments that he sent SpongeBob to. That raises the question of why, but given we know basically nothing about where SpongeBob even ends up, it's hard to say. I think it's definitely safe to say that most, if not all of the areas in the second half, are remnants of some kind of lost society or civilization. Whether all the fleshy bits and the monsters are something that's always existed there, simply being a byproduct of being in the abyss, or something that's taken over with time due to all the rot that's happened, it's hard to say. And it all just kind of feels like a spoof on something like Tomb Raider, going into ancient civilizations and finding horrible things that should be left buried. And we don't even know what the treasure was. And knowing that stingy Krabs, we probably won't get our hands on it at all. But we still do have more to dig into. We have that password, and where exactly can we input it? Well, a return trip to Jellyfish Fields will reveal that at the end there's some clams over the goalpost. Following the convenient trail of jellyfish that leads you over it, you can go to a second treasure chest. Finishing this takes us to a password room. This allows us to enter the diagnostic protocol, which we saw on the error screen. When we complete it, we're greeted with
Devlog 011-21-03. The funding we have received has proven to be more than enough to fund the equipment necessary for our Harvard Sinclair backup procedure. I've done it once. This will be trivial.
Not only have we reached a new level, but we've gotten a new playable character. Patrick was not at all present in the original release, outside of appearing at the very ending and the ending card. His complete absence in that version makes a little more sense here, knowing he was planned to be playable initially. I guess he just didn't make the cut, or at least his content was still being worked on. P is real 2401, I guess. His map also suggests this level is a continuation of SpongeBob's original journey. Rock Bottom makes pretty natural sense as a bridge between the original levels and the stranger levels that we got into later. But then not only does that raise the question of why Patrick picks up where SpongeBob left off, but I have to address the fact that Rock Bottom is considered stage 6, but we entered the Abyss in stage 4 after Sea Bear. That leaves another 2 levels completely unaccounted for. One seems to still be in the kelp forest and the other just in the sand. There's no real indicators of what either could be. But we can't really look back, it's time to look forward. Patrick comes with a dash that can be used to clear gaps or attack enemies. It's the main ability Patrick uses, so this level serves to tutorialize it a little bit. Other than that though, there really isn't much to write home about it. Just like SpongeBob, Patrick opens the treasure chest to end this level.
Devlog 012-07-03. They will be confused, but I will not mind. I fear the HSB procedure will be more complicated without a team. This is the second time a backup of this scale has been created.
Plankton! Crabs! Plankton!
Oh, here we go! Plankton's our first boss fight as Patrick. I was wondering when he'd show up, considering we dealt with Mr. Krabs in the main story. We can't attack him directly, but he throws bombs at us. If we let them explode, they'd set out a burst of projectiles that can be a bit tricky to dodge, but just knock him back and you're fine. This has gotta be a complex boss fight, no? I mean, Plankton's the main villain of the show. I wonder what he's gonna do. Oh. I mean, most of the boss fights so far. Yeah, at this rate I should have expected that. Plankton becomes this horrific mass of flesh, and we have to fight his giant exposed heart. This fight gave me a bit of trouble. The first phase with his heart shooting isn't the most difficult, but you are still getting used to Patrick's dash at this point. What really screwed me was the phase when he shot a bunch of bones out of his mouth. I'm not sure if it was a design flaw or a skill issue on my part, but during certain attacks, it felt like I couldn't do anything. There'd be too many coming at once, and I couldn't jump over one and then duck over a high one the next. I also don't think I was able to deflect them, but maybe I was wrong. Especially with having to redo the first phase over again, it's a boss fight that might take you a little bit. I also think it's worth raising a good amount of lore questions here. This is the first time we see a character directly transform, so presumably this is Plankton, unless this is some kind of doppelganger. And that implies that maybe the final boss of SpongeBob's run might have actually been Squidward at one point. But it could also imply in some way that the creatures from the Abyss are intentionally or unintentionally taking the form of the characters we already know. But it's also our first encounter with something like this in a more regular SpongeBob location. But when Plankton transforms, he also turns rock bottom into the City of Heads. Is this more of a psychological thing for Patrick? I have a hard time believing it because it's not like he thinks much in the first place. Were we teleported to the City of Heads? Did the land around get corrupted by Plankton somehow? Were the glitching effects meant to imply that this transformation isn't supposed to be part of the game? Or was it just something stylistic or symbolic to signify corruption? The only things I know for certain is that this is a tough boss fight, and it's the start of Patrick's turn to journey deep into the Abyss.
Devlog 012-1403. I won't come to regret this. My legacy means nothing compared to you. I will gladly give it all up, just for another chance.
Once again, Patrick's levels seem to be a continuation of where SpongeBob's left off, but this time in the Abyss. This one, with its gravestones and more purple hues, manages to feel pretty distinct from the levels we saw with SpongeBob. If the rot in the level's name didn't clue you in, maybe all the corpses and zombie enemies will give you an idea of what we're dealing with here. I love the name Rot Garden, by the way, it's very evocative. This level starts to offer our first real complete level as Patrick that doesn't have to tutorialize much. Rock Bottom introduced the speed pad mechanic, but this is the first level where you can really play around with them. It's a pretty fun mechanic, especially for breaking through a whole wall. The game also doesn't have much time to make use of it, but you can go in either direction based on which way you enter them, which can be pretty fun to experiment with. There's also the zombie enemies that come out of the ground. It makes you have to tread carefully on the corpse grounds. It's actually pretty fun sometimes when you jump up and without realizing it, you're already about to step on one of them. I really have to compliment the design choice to have clams in the very first spot where a zombie will jump out. They're positioned in such a way that you're encouraged to jump up to catch them, and doing so means you're ready to step on the first zombie that jumps out. It's one of those invisible design choices that you might not really notice, but your brain does. I just wanted to point it out because, I felt a little smart for noticing that myself, but I also think it's some really good design on Nixliz's part. It's proof that for as short and simple as this game is, and as much as it might not seem like anything crazy, it's very tightly designed. There's a real knack for design here that shines through any of the jank or simplicity of the game, and I have to applaud that.
Devlog 001-08-04. Your room has gone dark for so long. I yearn to see you again, but I fear you'll have grown to despise me. Our planes should be similar enough for us to meet without issue.
Simulacrum is the most distinct level we've seen so far, and given the context of the devlog that comes before it, it's a lot to think about. The map shows it in the Abyss, by where the sanctums and the other great abandoned structures are. It does share abandonment in common with those levels, but this is no grand temple of an ancient civilization or something eldritch and disturbing. It's an empty room, seemingly a bedroom or a living room, cast in shadows, empty. We're scaled down and have to traverse what's likely a table or something of the like. The spike balls and other traps I imagine are just there for gameplay purposes. Though if I want to go crazy and assign meaning to everything, I could imagine them maybe representing repressed aspects or negative elements to whatever memory the simulacrum is recreating. Or I could just be grasping at straws, who knows here, I just like to speculate. This is a really tough level too. One I died a lot on, though my first one was jumping into the pit at the very start, expecting some kind of Easter egg. A lot of deaths were also caused by my own habit to rush, getting exemplified by a certain event that happened in the level. Up until now, there hasn't been a single enemy in this level, and we won't see one later, but it appears we aren't alone. You might question how multiplayer even works, but real ones will know about the Game Boy Link cable, which allows two Game Boy Advances to connect and enables some multiplayer games like Four Swords Adventure. Question is, we're on an emulator, so how exactly is that expected to work? Maybe it didn't work at all, but for plenty of reasons, I didn't want to stick around to find out.
Devlog 003-1204. Please forgive me. Happy birthday, my beautiful boy. See you soon.
Up until now, I really can't say this game has scared me properly. I don't say that as a critique. I don't think many of these games are made with the intention of outright scaring you, and I think this game has actually succeeded a lot at being unsettling, disturbing, and intriguing in all the right ways. Ultimately, it's a SpongeBob horror game. Unless you take an insane amount of liberties or rely heavily on something like jump scares, it's going to be more of an understated and subtle horror. There's been moments of tension and unease, but the Deep Sanctum? This level is... I don't like looking at it. It's surprisingly gross. Like, sure, they're scarier, I've seen worse, but for a creepypasta game, for a SpongeBob game, this is really good. And compared to everything up until now, it's some of the most stark visuals we've seen. Compared to the bloody, fresh, visceral reds we've seen, this is muted and drab black and yellows. All the flesh and organic matter you've seen is finally rotting. And the word hyper-realistic gets thrown around a lot, but this feels like that idea well executed. It's a good thing I have a lot to say about the visuals, cause the level, I can't speak on for as long. It isn't finished. Not in the sense of the game being unfinished in universe. I mean, Nixliz didn't finish it. You see, the 2004 build was never actually finished. Nixliz canceled the project out of a mix of frustration with creepypasta as a whole and probably the desire to work on other projects. The end of this level will simply be a pit that won't kill you, but you'll never escape either. Forever stuck with the writhing maggots and flesh, occasionally bearing witness to the game glitching out over and over, restarting the really good soundtrack. Like, I swear every time the song just starts getting good, it glitches out. But that's all there's really left to say on this level. So what, I just made you watch a video on a completely unfinished game with no ending? Ooh, I gotcha, I tricked you, I made you watch something that's not even done, ooh! Well, only a little. For one, I just wanted to talk about it because I like it. But also, I don't think that it being unfinished means that there isn't anything to talk about. This is actually woefully underreported. This video is on the first version, but nothing on this build. It might be unfinished, but that doesn't mean we can't piece things together anyways, and maybe it'd be more fun with the lingering mysteries. Besides, how many creepypastas and scary game stories like this actually stick the landing on their endings? Firstly is the distinction between the two versions. The original release seems to be a fully complete product, if short. This newer, updated build, despite having more content with the Patrick levels, also seems to be a less complete game. While that's true on a literal level too, I mean it narratively speaking. Patrick's levels are accessed through a debug mode and seem to show more levels that aren't included or mentioned anywhere else in the game, stringing together a much less coherent narrative. In addition to the strange tone shift levels in the area I've called the Abyss, we also have a level set in what seems to be a child's room, and every level's intersection, rather than being with Mr. Krabs, is these strange devlogs. The devlogs are referred to as a safe zone, which is a very strange thing to call them. It implies they're more of a place than simply a dialogue window. The author of the devlog seems to be the creator of this specific build, and to make some assumptions, given their secretive nature, they're speaking of funding, and some of the levels seeming more tailored to their specific goals, I would imagine they're a lead developer and/or potentially someone high up at Bungie. To them, the game is a means to an end for what's called a Harvard Sinclair backup procedure. This is almost certainly a made-up concept, but the name seems to be in reference to one Harvard doctor named David A. Sinclair, who's known for his research into lifespan, suggesting that there is no real limit to human lifespan and that we might have a copy of our genetic information within us. This appears to be supported by the further devlogs, as our unnamed developer seems intent on bringing somebody back. They do also suggest it's been done before, but we don't know any details of that. What we know for 100% is extremely minimal. Even a lot of what I've said up to now can arguably be speculation to a degree, but from here on out, I'm more or less putting the pieces together from my own thoughts. One last clue we have accessible in normal gameplay seems to be another hidden devlog that appears during some of the glitch screens.
Devlog 012-1403. I noticed something weird. Dated yesterday, the sprite for Squidward was modified slightly. His nose was...
Most of the rest is hard to make out due to the visual glitches. There's two things to draw from this. For one, the 2004 build's developer seems to be paying attention to the rest of the game's content, seemingly actually invested in it, at least enough to notice a change in Squidward's sprite. I know that might sound silly, but given the rest of the game's graphic content, you could just presume that a lot of this is the result of developers who really don't care. This to me suggests there's some intention as to what's being done here. Then again, we lack proper context as to which Squidward this refers to. Is it the normal character himself, the one we had a small playable glimpse of? Or is this the strange Squidward-like final boss? Said change also suggests that other developers may be working on the game in strange and unintended ways, possibly as a result of some kind of lack of communication. This could suggest either a specific third party is tampering with the 2004 build's content, or it could just mean that all of the game's strange content is a result of some kind of miscommunication or tampering, but this is speculation on top of speculation. This could even be the result of some kind of glitch within the game itself, especially considering the strange procedures going on with it. Let's get into that now. So, what exactly is this Harvard Sinclair backup procedure, and what is the point of all of this game? From all the logs, it could be suggested that our developer is trying to use this procedure to bring back a family member. With the use of Beautiful Boy and Simulacrum seemingly being a child's room, the pretty safe answer is that this is their son. The son's fate is unknown, most likely dead or otherwise not present. I would presume the first though. Our grief-stricken father is willing to use the money from this game and seemingly anything to bring their son back. The details of this procedure are very uncertain too. The developer's writing suggests that it has a very heavy cost, not just financially, but potentially mentally or spiritually. The use of the term planes makes me think it is also a more spiritual procedure. This is also where I ask one of the most pervasive questions of this. Why SpongeBob? The answer might be a little silly, but let's take a step back. SpongeBob is super popular and with wide appeal even now, sure, but especially from my childhood, I remembered it being a show that could bridge generations. It didn't just entertain me as a child, it was something my entire immediate family could quote and laugh at. It was something that we could all look forward to watching together. Even more than other works oriented towards families, SpongeBob has a certain level of wit, humor, and just artistry to it that really captured children, sure, but also entertained adults in a very specific and unique way to them. It was really something that was a phenomenon, anyone could enjoy it, and I could easily see a father and son both bonding over it. SpongeBob has actually had a pretty good track record with games, and I'd wager some of that is down to the fact that the developers are actually fans of the show. It isn't just them being contracted to make a cartoon game, but it's something that they actually enjoy, at least in some degree. And I have to imagine that at least some of the developers on Treasure Hunt, despite its strangeness and sometimes just aversion to being tonally consistent with the source material, they had to also have been fans too. And I imagine our grief-stricken father, developer, probably was a fan too. The son he misses so dearly, he probably has many fond memories watching the show with him, quoting it. And to speculate a bit more about the procedure, the talk of planes and the whole spiritual nature makes me think it's not just a matter of factually bringing someone back, but you also have to tap into their memories. And to make these planes similar, to give the spirit of the child a reason to come back, why not make something in one of his favorite shows? Something that they both shared in common that can both reunite them. Of course, we know that any kind of deal like this to bring someone back is a deal with the devil. We still have to address the dark content of the game, especially assuming it to be a bridge between two worlds for a father to meet his son. Why would there be such graphic content that would not be appropriate for any child like that? It's hard to say for sure. Part of me simply thinks it could be about developers venting. Assuming the procedure is costly and potentially hard to develop for, I imagine stress, potential crunch time, could lead to them creating these weird graphic levels as a sort of venting frustrations. Of course, there's just that answer, but I also think that it could be a more literal, emotional representation of what's going on. The themes of this abyssal level seem to be about death, or more specifically, undeath. Could this potentially be a sort of spiritual creation to harness the ability to bring someone back? In order to have this sort of ideal resurrection, you have to have a world that's rotten, dying. You have to take in order to give. Who knows, but we do know our developer definitely had to take more than just this. That last sight in the Squidward level before the game glitched, it appears to be a corpse. A wiki even corroborates this, but take that as you will. The file is apparently named SPR_Riker_corpse. Given what we have, this could be our developer, no? How else is he supposed to enter this realm? The Bunchiesoft offices too, it might not be a literal bridging of the worlds. Squidward didn't become real. At least I really hope not. It's likely that the offices and the simulacrum both are a sign of needing to recreate reality. The simulacrum recreating the ideal, where the developer wants to be, and the offices recreating the then and now. The corpse being likely the last step of his plan. We can actually skip past the Deep Sanctum using debug tools. This final level is, as the SoundCloud explains, a final boss fight against Mr. Martinez's soul. This taken with the original game description, it's likely the sole developer of the 2004 patch, the same developer found deceased in his home, is one Riker Martinez. It's likely all the machinery and tools mentioned in that description are what's necessary for the Harvard Sinclair procedure, as well that Mr. Martinez's life on this physical coil was ended and his soul trapped in the game. And trapped here it must have been for some time. At minimum, it's been here since 2016, since that's when the urban exploration occurred. But it's more than likely it could have occurred during the game's 2004 development, potentially being a reason for the mysterious cancellation. There appears to be no sign of his son either. Perhaps he truly was disgusted with him and didn't stay, or perhaps he was never there in the first place, as much as Simulacrum as the locations he was housed in. That's really all the room for plot speculation. And I'm more than ready to accept I've probably got some or maybe even all of that wrong. There's two other unused songs too. One is simply for the Bunchiesoft office level. It comes from a point in development when the level was intended to end Patrick's campaign. It was replaced with the Deep Sanctum and instead moved to the first campaign's ending. I do wonder if that change was made simply as a creative decision during development, or if it was made more as a result of the unfinished nature of the build, simply trying to string together what content was finished to make something mostly coherent. The final unused song, which is an absolute banger, is called Debug Probe. It was made for an ending to Patrick's campaign, where the player would have taken control of a literal probe debugging the game by destroying everything in all the previous stages. It sounds really cool, and I wonder what the plot implications are supposed to be. Was the game kind of like an info hazard or otherwise just too dangerous to be left around? Was this part of the process in destroying and/or freeing Mr. Martinez's soul? Or was it just the logical conclusion of the game? Unless Nixliz wants to speak up on it, I don't think we'll get the answer. And I'd like to know that answer, but at the same time, I can't blame them for wanting to move on. In their discussion on why they canceled the game, they mentioned a lot of details about frustrations with the creepypasta community. I don't know if I agree with the entire message, but I certainly understand where Nixliz comes from. And more broadly speaking, I understand wanting to leave certain projects behind and expand your horizons. I honestly relate to a lot to those feelings and the situation Nixliz was in. As a creator, I too understand what it's like to not want to see a project to completion. I mean, even this video came as a result of putting another one on hiatus because I felt it lacked direction. And here I am making an over hour-long video now on something that was completely spur of the moment. As a creator, but also just broadly speaking, I feel like knowing when to give things a break or just leave them completely is kind of an important skill. If my reading of the story is correct as well, there's kind of an irony in that that's also a pervasive theme here. Mr. Martinez seems unable to move on from his loss. Understandable, sure, but it's something we all have to do eventually. The desire for one last chance to say goodbye or just to talk, it consumes his life completely. It doesn't seem like he's out of position to say if it was worth it, but I think the fact he's in such a position already answers that question for us. At least he got to choose Bikini Bottom for his eternal purgatory. This was a lot of work and scope that got out of hand, but I'm really glad I did this. And unfinished though it may be, I'm really glad Nixliz put this game out there. As much as I would have loved to get some concrete answers and have a full, complete story to tell you guys, the fun was in the hunt. Part of me this whole time did have to wrangle with the idea that I'm making a video on a SpongeBob creepypasta game, but it was really fun. I like to pride myself on being more genuine and not super irony poisoned in my tastes, but it's also not always my cup of tea to look at creepypastas that are, again, about children's cartoons. But I also like to think I can respect good artistry when I see it, no matter where it is. What caught my attention about this was the fact that it's a playable game, and I feel like it leverages that fact quite well. A lot of what goes on, I could see being written in a story in such a way that's really not compelling and generic, and I think even just describing it can make it difficult to sound unique. But it's a game you play, and what it's presenting isn't trying super hard to be scary or anything of the sort. It simply exists and allows you to enjoy that aesthetic. But I think too, it also has a bit of a sense of humor to it. I wouldn't say it's made in jest or irony. I've seen people call this game a parody, and I don't really think it's an accurate label, but I think it's made with at least enough of an understanding that it's a creepypasta, and it's a creepypasta about SpongeBob. Inherently, that's pretty funny and absurd. I don't think it ever stops and kneecaps its scares for the sake of being funnier, but I also think that it treads the line between horror and comedy. That's a very real line, and I know Nixliz knows this quite well, since their next project, Capture the Intelligence, a TF2-based horror game, definitely rides that line a lot more. I think it's similarly a game that has the intention to be scary, but understands that horror can always be funny to some people, and it's taking a concept that's a little more inherently absurd. It basically feels like taking those sorts of abominations you see in Gmod videos, pushing them to be a little more body horror-y and presenting them in a scary light. But it also has restraint and doesn't push them so hard into trying to be scary. I think it's such a thing where if you immerse yourself, you can get a bit of scares and tension from it, but if you're so used to these Gmod characters or you're just not really the type to be scared of horror games, it's a bit more funny than anything. Maybe one day I'll check that game out, but as for SpongeBob's Treasure Hunt, I really enjoyed this. I think I'm one of, if not the first person on YouTube to really go into the 2004 build. There's videos on the base game, and that's how I learned about it, but I haven't seen much discussion of this later build, which is what really encouraged me to make this. I know it's definitely not perfect. This is my first foray in really analyzing something that I don't have other people's sources or perspectives on as much, but I really enjoyed it, and I think I have something to say, which is why I went through with making this whole video. I still have to thank Nixliz too for even making this game. Even as short and simple as it may be, game development is a crazy hard thing to do, especially if you're doing all sides of it yourself. Combining sprite work, music, game design, altogether Nixliz did a pretty great job on everything you could as a solo developer. I wish them the best of luck wherever their passions take them. And I thank you all for watching this video. It was a lot of work, and maybe the most work I've put into a video since my channel really blew up. And even then, I just had to get this out at a certain point, so I could tell there's a lot of things I probably could have done better. But I do hope they didn't end up ruining your viewing experience. I'm gonna do the YouTuber thing now. The fact that you sat through this whole video does mean a lot to me, as does all of your support. No matter how big or small, the fact that I have an audience is amazing. And even if you didn't love this video, I appreciate you giving me a chance with it. As every YouTuber tells you, like, subscribe, do everything you've done to a video you really truly enjoy, but only if you did enjoy it. I plan to do more videos like this in the future on weird and interesting games, but maybe not videos this long. You'll just have to wait to see, but I hope if you enjoyed this, my future videos will be more up your alley too. And I'll leave you with the credits. Look at all these great devs at Bungie Soft. Look at old Big Mike down there.